Good evening, and welcome everybody to the Voter Choice Arizona Education event. Thank you very much for spending the last few minutes of your work week with us. Tonight's presentation is designed to explain ranked choice voting to our audience, both online and here in person, to pique your interest, hopefully, and about this exciting election reform that we're talking about tonight, and hopefully inspire engagement in our efforts moving forward. So who is Voter Choice Arizona? Well, we were formed back in 2020 with the goal to bring ranked choice voting to the state of Arizona. And we've been working on our two-pronged strategy. The first is to build our organization and ultimately to enact ranked choice voting in the state of Arizona. Our priorities in this year are to educate people, and that's why we're here tonight, and to grow our list of supporters. We hope that after tonight we can count you as some of our supporters, and to build a coalition. Let me tell you about what's going to happen tonight. For those of you who are in the room, you got a little notebook and you've got some index cards on which you can ask some questions if you would like. You can write your questions, and then Jonathan, who's at the back of the room, if you wave it up, he'll come and get it. If you happen to be joining us online, you can always put your questions in the chat. Jonathan will be monitoring them, and we will allow time at the end of our presentation to ensure that your questions are answered. Now, if we do run out of time, rest assured that we will make sure that your questions are answered after the event. We will send you an email. We will send you this slide deck so you don't have to take copious notes throughout. And we'll send you some helpful links, and we will be asking for your feedback after tonight's event. Voter Choice Arizona is part of a coalition of organizations that is working for ranked choice voting. And we are very proud to be associated with some local groups that are part of national groups. Those are the Institute for Political Innovation, Represent Us, Unite America, and Rank the Vote. So when you get your slide deck, if you're interested in looking at any of those other groups, we encourage you to seek them out. At this time, it is my pleasure to introduce the members of our team that are here tonight. Just briefly, I want to share their names with you. I'll save you Amanda for just a minute, but go ahead, Eric.
My name is Eric Varela. I'm on the messaging team.
My name is Sean Krieg. I'm on the executive board.
I'm Dennis Fernandez. I'm on our fundraising and executive teams. And I'm Ben Bosler. I'm on Speakers Bureau.
Blake Saka on our executive team and endorsements team.
Right. And we did not have a memo to wear a blue shirt, but apparently they are all in sync. So, and at this time, it is really my pleasure to introduce our special guest tonight, Dr. Amanda Burke. She's the Executive Vice President of the Center for the Future of Arizona. And she has joined us this evening to share some of the insights from the 2020 Gallup poll, or the Gallup Arizona survey, that relates to our topic that we're talking about tonight. Amanda, come on up. I'll switch you seats.
Thank you so much. Good evening or late afternoon, almost evening. It's a real pleasure to be able to join you all today and share a little bit about the Center for the Future of Arizona and our most recent findings, which include some really helpful insights, I think, into electoral reform, which will be, I think, of particular interest to this group. So as Kathy shared, my name is Amanda Burke. I am the, let me just try to advance here. I am the Executive Vice President of the Center for the Future of Arizona. Our mission is to bring Arizonans together to create a stronger and brighter future for the state. And we do that in a variety of ways. We, one, listen to Arizonans to understand really what matters most to them. We get those issues into the public dialogue and into decision making. We share data on how Arizona is actually doing on the issues that Arizonans care about. And finally, we work with communities and leaders to solve public problems. including with deep ongoing work in the areas of education, workforce development, and civic engagement. We're a nonprofit organization. We're located in downtown Phoenix, but we work across the state with communities all over. The project that I have the opportunity to share with you about tonight is something called the Gallup Arizona Project. This is really the premier way in which the Center for the Future of Arizona listens to the priorities of Arizonans and really understanding what it is that they most want for the future of the state. So we partner with the Gallup organization, which if you're not familiar, really is the gold standard when it comes to public surveys, and intentionally designed a survey to be representative of Arizonans. And really what we sought to do is better understand how are Arizonans experiencing life today? What do they most value and care about? And importantly, what changes do they want to see happen over the next 10 years? The survey included 80 questions across a broad range of topics. It was, as I shared, designed to be representative of Arizonans. And by that, I mean across geography, demographics, kind of you name it, so that we could ensure that the findings really can be the basis for regional and statewide work. The survey was conducted between August of 2020 and April of 2020. And this is a survey that our center does every 10 years. So what did we find? One thing we found is what are Arizonans' outlook on the future of our state? And that main headline here is that Arizonans are proud to live in this state. People have a real deep connection to Arizona, and many are uncertain about its future. We find that overall, 44% of Arizonans agree that the state is headed in the right direction. And when we dig a little bit deeper into the data, what we find is that young college-educated Arizonans are especially less certain about the future of the state. Another key finding is that Arizonans overwhelmingly agree on more than we disagree. Arizonans agree on 7 shared public values, and these are issue areas that through the survey we identified where more than 70% of Arizonans overwhelmingly agree. And then you see those 7 shared public values articulated. And it's not just that Arizonans overwhelmingly agree, it's with strong support across geography, income, ethnicity, race, education level. So we really can say that this is truly where Arizonans have agreement. We find that this is remarkable, especially given the current national narrative around division and polarization. And these findings really provide the basis for public will around making the changes that Arizonans truly want to see for the future of this state. And so we have much in common, and that also includes the foundation for action. So it's one thing to say we know what we want, but Arizonans are hungry for action. The survey findings show that there were 42 actions where Arizonans, again, 70% or more, overwhelmingly agree. These are the actions that we need to take. This is way too small for anyone to be able to digest. The point here is to say that we really have the basis for an action agenda for the future in the major issue areas of education, health and wellness, jobs and economic opportunity, environment and sustainable future, civic engagement and leadership, fair, just, and equitable systems, as well as immigration reform. Those are issue areas that we asked. It's not that Arizonans agreed on every single action. We asked about many, many possible actions that Arizonans could take. These are the 42 where there was consensus. And on the handout that you received, that action agenda is on the back side. And we do have a full comprehensive report that I'll share the link at the end and invite you to dig into the data to really learn more about these specific actions. I did want to share just a couple of highlights on civic engagement and leadership in terms of some of the key findings, knowing how important that is to this particular group here. So a few highlights One is that when we ask Arizonans about leadership in the state, we find that most Arizonans lack confidence in our state's leadership and our state's elected leaders. So only 28% of Arizonans agree that we have the leaders in place who can lead the state through tough times. And you can see on the slide a few, if we dig in a little bit deeper in terms of outlook, planning for the future, using data to make decisions, relatively low levels of confidence. However, what we do find is that Arizonans do agree when we look at the actions again on a number of actions to improve our electoral system. So highlighted here, offering early in-person voting over multiple weeks. Almost 80% of Arizonans strongly agree with that. Automatic voter registration when applying for a state ID or driver's license, 77%. I know ranked choice is of particular interest here. 60% of Arizonans overwhelmingly support ranked choice. And across the board for these findings on state election reforms, younger Arizonans are even more likely to support each of these changes. Despite our divided political landscape, we also found that most Arizonans want to work together on the issues that are important to them. So 75% of Arizonans said, yes, I'm willing to speak with people with different views than I have to solve problems. And almost 60% of Arizonans are confident that we can pull together to solve tough problems. So I wanted to end with some upbeat notes there, and that I think we have a lot we can build on. And my final comment is this is an invitation for all of us to take action. Each of us as Arizonans, there's something we can do from the seats that we're in, the communities that we're a part of, the organizations that we're engaged in to achieve the Arizona we want. The Arizona we want is this vision of long-term success that's based on the hopes and dreams and aspirations of Arizonans. It's a vision that the Center for the Future of Arizona has helped articulate through the findings of the most recent Gallup survey and one that we did 10 years prior. But it's not an agenda that CFA is going to address by ourselves. We don't have the capacity, nor should we. This is a broad vision for all of us in our state, and there's a role for each of us to play. So I would invite you to read the full report at arizonafuture.org. I know the slides will be sent. That's a link, so you can immediately go right there and download the full report, which delves into each of the issue areas. And then please know that the data that we're sharing in the report is really just the tip of the iceberg. And we welcome the opportunity to have conversations, make presentations, answer questions you have about data. And our hope is that we can get the data into the hands of people to drive action forward. So thank you so much. We appreciate the opportunity to share.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Amanda. When we thought about this session today, we thought that one of the things we wanted to start with was the compelling reason for reform. And I think Amanda did a great job of painting the picture of what we can aspire to if we're able to make the system work for all of us. So thank you very much, Amanda. Before we talk in detail about reform, it's important that we understand how the current system works. So in our current system, voters choose one candidate, and the candidate with the most votes wins. That could be 30% or 70%. And that system is typically called first past the post. We have a primary election, typically in August. For cities, towns, and school boards, there are no party designations on the ballot. We call those nonpartisan elections. For county, state, and national races, those are partisan races. And then the primary election determines who runs in the general election in November. It's also important that we understand who votes in Arizona. So in the 2020 general election, 3.3 million Arizonans cast ballots. 57% of those were over the age of 45. 88% voted early by mail or at early voting centers. As we think about local and statewide adoption of ranked choice voting, it's important that we understand who votes and how they vote. And it's also important that we understand turnout. In 2020, in the general election in Arizona, we had a record turnout. Nearly 80% of people exercised their right to vote, of registered voters. That's a fantastic number. Even with that very high number, however, only 36% of voters voted in the primary. And historically, if we look at the last 30 years, less than 30% of registered voters vote in the primary. And we're going to do a quick exercise to illustrate the importance of that. So I would invite the people in the audience, if you would, just stand up for me briefly. And I'll just try to describe what's happening in the room. So in the room, we've had 7 people stand up. And so now I'm going to ask the 4 people on this side of the room to sit down. So your vote doesn't count. You're part of the 70% of Arizona that don't vote in the primary. And so now I'd ask the 2 of you on this side to please go ahead and sit down. Your vote doesn't count because you live in one of 25 of the 30 Arizona voting districts where we have an overwhelming Republican or Democrat majority. So we have 1 person standing left in the room. So 10% of Arizona voters determine the outcome of the majority of our elections. You can go ahead and sit down. Thank you all. We think that's one of many flaws. So as Amanda just articulated, only 28% of Arizonans believe our elected leaders are up to the task. We're electing the wrong people. No independent, green, libertarian, or other third-party candidates even attempted to run for the Arizona Senate in 2020. 32% of Arizona voters are registered as an independent, but Arizona is the only state in the country never who have elected an independent to our Arizona state legislature. 25 of our 30 legislative districts are non-competitive, meaning one major party or the other holds a more than 5% registration advantage. And as we just demonstrated, we have low participation in the primary election. Amanda Burke gave you a great overview of what Arizonans want. I've shared with you a little bit about how the current system works and some of its flaws. So 1 second, we have a question. Somebody's raising their hand. With questions, we've given you some index cards in the room. What we're asking you to do is write that question down and we will get to it at the end. So thank you. And on the chat, if you have a question, please put it in the chat and we will capture it. So we know what Arizonans want. We know what the problems are. And now we're going to have several experts from Voter Choice Arizona talk about our recommended solution, ranked choice voting. And up first is Kaz.
Thank you, Blake. All right. So ranked choice voting might be a novel electoral system for a lot of Arizonans. And so I'd like to just talk about what it is. So ranked choice voting is a very simple change to our ballot. And rather than just selecting one candidate, we rank our candidates from our favorite candidate all the way down to our least favorite. You don't have to rank all candidates, but if your candidate doesn't have enough support, then that vote is transferred down to the next ranked candidate. There can be more than 3 candidates. There can be as many as we choose to allow. And you can use write-in candidates as well. And so Hopefully this is coming up clearly enough. It probably is coming up clearly enough online. Hopefully it's coming up clearly enough in person. But this is what a ranked choice voting ballot would look like. And so you would simply choose each of your candidates and rank them first, second, and third, all the way down the ballot for as many candidates as you feel comfortable making a decision on. And so now we're going to look at a simple example. So in this example, we've got 4 candidates, and we'll just call them A, B, C, and D. So in the first round of the election, candidate A has 40% of the vote, candidate B has 35%, C has 20%, and D has 5% of the vote. Now, if you ranked candidate D as your first choice, it doesn't look like they're going to win the election, and they get eliminated. And so your vote gets transferred to your next choice. And this all happens without having to go back to the polls and having a second runoff election. This happens just on the same piece of paper that you cast your first vote on. So candidate D was eliminated, and the votes were transferred. All of the votes from candidate D went to candidate A. And so now candidate A has 45%. They're coming up close to that 50% threshold that they would need to have a majority and win the election. And so let's see what happens after we eliminate candidate C. So after candidate C was eliminated, all of their votes actually ended up going to candidate B. And we finally have a majority winner. And we've crossed that 50% threshold, which would mean candidate B is the winner of the election. In reality, it's slightly more complex just because all the person's votes don't go to one single candidate, unless they have some extremely efficient campaigning methods. And so, candidate C's choices would probably be split between A and B in real life. So now we're going to give you an opportunity to practice this with a real demonstration. And so I'm going to turn it over to Eric so he can facilitate that.
Thank you, Kaz. As he mentioned, my name is Eric, and we are going to actually try ranked choice voting out. So the first thing I'm going to ask everybody to do is go ahead and take out your cell phone, because we're going to use technology for this. All right. And what we're going to do is we're going to scan this QR code on your phone. All you have to do is open up your camera, zoom in if you need to, and then push down right where that shows up on your camera. And that's going to give you the ability to go to the website that's going to facilitate all of this. Same thing if you are at home or wherever and you're logged into the Zoom meeting, do the same thing. And we are going to vote on the most iconic foods in Arizona. Okay, so these are going to be your favorite foods. And as we start to do this, I want you to think of it in terms of we're going to get food for everybody in the room a little bit later, right? And whoever wins, that's what we're going to get. And using ranked choice voting, most of us are going to be happy with that choice. Now, some of the choices on there, you will notice, are not so common, right? I think probably everybody's had a breakfast burrito before, or at least heard of it, but maybe not pica bread, maybe not pozole, okay? So if you've never heard of these foods and you've never had them, you definitely don't have to vote for them because you don't know anything about it. Now, of course, also imagine that if you had this list prior, well, you might go and try some of these foods out that you haven't had yet. I'll give everybody a moment to do this. Yeah, you may have to zoom in.
How many are we picking?
You're picking as many as you would like.
It's pozole.
All right, everybody get it? I want to make sure before. There's a little thing that go ahead and help her out. As many as you want. You can vote for as few or as many as you'd like. Okay. Kaz, you get it? Okay. So. Yes, they sure are. They sure are. So I'm going to go ahead and vote on this myself right now. So this is what you see. All right. So you're going to choose your favorite down to your least favorite. Again, you do not have to do all of them. All right. Don't forget to click that you're not a robot, and then submit your vote. Okay. All right. So you can see that we've got 20 votes so far. We'll review those in just a moment. Let's go ahead and take a look. Okay, so we can see once again, breakfast burrito wins, and again after 4 rounds. So let's see how that all panned out. In the first round, breakfast burrito had 25% of the vote. Nobody had 50% or more. So this was actually pretty spread out really well. So then we have to eliminate one. It was chimichanga. So all the votes for that are going to be distributed to that second choice. So if you voted for chimichanga first, your second choice is going to be your next vote. In the second round, breakfast burrito still on top. But again, we have to eliminate something. And this time it is Sonoran hot dog. So if you voted for Sonoran hot dog, your vote is going to go to your next choice. Now in round 3, breakfast burrito still gaining steam. Navajo taco not doing so bad, but we have a tie there. So both the last 2 are going to be distributed to that next choice, where we get to round 4 and we see that breakfast burrito gets 55%. This is the second time that it's won, by the way. So clearly it is the most popular. And by the way, if you haven't been like anywhere, I don't know, just a little bit east of Arizona, you say breakfast burrito and they look at you like you've got something coming out of your head. So it is definitely an Arizona food. So you can see that's how it would work. All right. So kind of instant runoffs, right? We don't have to have another vote if things are close. It just automatically does that. That's how this all works. All right. And I'm going to pass it now over to Ben.
Thank you, Eric. All right. So now that you know how ranked choice voting works, there are so many good reasons to support ranked choice voting, but I'm just going to tell you about a few of them. First of all, no more winners with 30, 40 something percent of the vote. With ranked choice voting, you keep transferring votes and eliminating candidates until a candidate gets a majority, more than half of the votes. So the winner always, in a ranked choice voting election, always has a majority mandate. Second, because there's no risk of vote splitting, more candidates are likely to run, and voters can express their support for those candidates without worrying about their throwing the election the wrong way or wasting their vote. Third, it can actually, campaigns can become more positive. So because candidates are looking not just for the top ranked vote, but for the second and third ranked votes from other candidate supporters, they have an incentive to actually highlight the things that they agree on with those other candidates. And we actually saw an example of this in the New York City mayoral primary, where they used ranked choice voting. 2 of the candidates actually shared a campaign stage, even though they were competing with each other for the same position. Fourth, it eliminates runoff elections. So no more expensive runoff elections. In 2018, in Phoenix, there was a runoff election for the mayor because in the first round of voting, no candidate had a majority. So they had a runoff election that happened months later. It cost the city more than $1 million. Fewer than half as many voters actually turned out to vote in the election. With ranked choice voting, if they had simply let voters frank their preferences on the initial ballot, you could have had that runoff election instantly. And this is why, as Eric just referred to it, sometimes ranked choice voting is called instant runoff voting. And finally, no more lesser of 2 evils. So you no longer have to worry about voting for a candidate you think can win or your favorite, and worry about wasting your vote. But if you vote for your favorite, you can safely vote for the candidate who is your favorite and have the benefit of those backup choices. So if that candidate doesn't win, your vote still counts. And of course, it avoids spoiler candidates. So this is the classic example of a spoiler candidate. This is the 2000 presidential election, right, in Florida. You have the two front runners, Bush and Gore, in a very close race. And the third party, Green Party candidate, Ralph Nader, with more than enough votes to make up the difference between the two. And we know from exit polls that if Nader weren't in the race, many of his voters would have voted for Gore instead, easily enough to make the difference between the votes and ultimately the entire election. So Nader then gets called a spoiler because for being in the race, he causes the election to go to Bush rather than the candidate who's more similar to him, Al Gore. So of course, in this example, the spoiler was a Green Party candidate, but there are many examples of spoilers for conservative Republican candidates as well. And so with ranked choice voting, Ralph Nader's supporters could have voted for Nader as their first rank and had Gore as their second rank. And you would have ended up with the winner always having a majority and a majority mandate. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sean.
Thank you, Ben. All right. Right. Well, now that Ben has converted everyone to a ranked choice voting true believer, I'm sure you're all asking yourselves, where is this currently being used? Why aren't we using it already? So one thing that I was surprised by was by how many states in the United States already use it in some capacity. You can probably notice there's a conspicuous Arizona shaped gap right there, but we are surrounded by states that use ranked choice voting in some capacity or another. 29 states to be precise. This diversity of use, as you can see at the bottom, there's usually 5 main buckets. Some states use it for all of their elections. That will be Alaska and Maine. Other states use it in a diminished capacity. My home state, Louisiana, uses it for overseas military voting. But the diversity of use suggests a diversity of adaptation. Because laws and politics naturally differ from state to state, there's been a variety of different methods that ranked choice voting has taken to become adopted in these different jurisdictions. All right, and here's as you can see, not nearly the 29 states that use it, but there's a kind of a brief overview of how other states have implemented ranked choice voting. As mentioned earlier, Maine uses it in the general election. Alaska does also use it in the general election, but we have them listed further down the slide because they paired that change to the method of voting with open primaries. A lot of states use it, or excuse me, a lot of municipalities use it. That's how it's used in Utah in both municipalities and in party primary elections. So probably one of the highest profile ranked choice voting successes in recent history is Alaska. As you see, they implemented in conjunction with open primaries, and they did it statewide. So I think might kind of bear, excuse me, it might make sense to look a little bit at some other methods of voter reform that could be paired with ranked choice voting to implement it here in our state. As we've established, Voter Choice Arizona is dedicated to education and promotion of ranked choice voting, but there are a few different reforms that could potentially be paired with ranked choice voting, either to improve electoral outcomes or to improve the viability of a ballot measure. I won't go through all of them here, but there's a number of different reasons why these are on the slides, which, as you mentioned earlier, will be sent out to all of the attendees. They're on the slide because we think that they may have some capacity to help improve elections, and we also think that they could be legal here in Arizona. Without getting too much into the details, there are limitations to what could potentially go on to a ballot measure. We believe that all of these stand a decent chance. So in addition to additional forms of election administration, there's a number of different ways that ranked choice voting could be adapted here in Arizona. We could start out on a local level, and locally you could either do that via ordinance or by charter amendment, depending on whether or not that jurisdiction is a general law jurisdiction or they're a charter city. And that could either be done through an initiative, put it in front of all the voters, or via a council vote. Of course, like I said, Voter Choice Arizona is looking to bring ranked choice voting here to Arizona as a state, not just municipalities. So the statewide option is the ultimate goal. However, there's a good chance that a municipal election could build a good foundation for a later, wider ballot measure. For a statewide initiative, you could do that statutorily or via constitutional amendment. It could even be done via legislative referral, although there are a few pros and cons to that as well. We do think that the citizens initiative is the way to go for this. We don't necessarily think that a legislative option is potentially viable, but it is an option that we will continue to consider. So now we've talked about a couple different methods that we could reform elections in conjunction with ranked choice voting and how we might do that. I'd like to bring Kathy back up to have a little video.
Thank you, Sean. And I think I forgot to introduce myself before. My name is Kathy Connect, and I have the privilege of working with this team both on securing endorsements and getting people trained up to be speakers to go out and talk about ranked choice voting. When you get your slides emailed to you, there's going to be 2 slides that I'm not going to read to you. They're after this one that talk about 9 different ways, 9 different steps to talking about ranked choice voting. But better than reading you the slide, we're going to show you a little video. One of our team members who wasn't able to be here, her name is Krista Potenza, and she'll show you how in 30 seconds to pitch the idea of ranked choice voting to your friends and family. So here we go.
Have you heard of ranked choice voting? Instead of picking one candidate, you rank them first choice, second choice, and so on. The benefit is no more lesser of 2 evils. You have the power of a backup vote if your first choice candidate can't win. Your vote is never wasted, your voice is always heard, and no candidate can win with 40, 30, or 20-something% of the vote. The winner always has majority support. Does that sound like something you can get behind?
She's our,
Have you heard of ranked choice voting?
Yes, you have heard of ranked choice voting. So when you get your slides, these are the nine different steps that she talks about, how to pitch ranked choice voting. So we're getting near the end of our presentation, and you might be asking again, why is this important? Well, as we learn from the work of the Center for the Future of Arizona, only 28% of Arizonans are satisfied with the civic leaders that are here now. So if we keep doing the same thing, we're going to have the same results. And 60% of the people said that they would like to see ranked choice voting in the state of Arizona. So what we're talking about is those shared public values. We want civic engagement that solves our problems and a democracy that works for everybody. So how can you help? If you're excited about what you heard today or you want to learn some more, we would encourage you to sign up for more information. If you're joining us online, there are plenty of opportunities to let us know who you are at our website, voterchoiceaz.org. If you're here in person, please make sure that you sign our sign-in sheet at the back of the room so we can stay in touch. We have many volunteer opportunities across the entire state. So wherever you are, please sign up to volunteer. So with that, we want to thank you again for coming. There are snacks for those of you in the room. Take whatever you like on the way out. We hope that this is not the last time that we have an opportunity to engage with you, and have a great weekend. Thank you for coming, and drive home safely.